Wherever you are, welcome to another of my takes on China. And wherever I go, I hope to learn something new. And the other day was no exception. I spent a night and a day in the Xibe Autonomous Region in the west of Xinjiang. The language of this region is spoken by about 200,000 people in the world, but surprisingly, only about 30,000 of them live in that region. The rest are scattered around the world, but a huge number of them live in northeast China. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'm in the very far northwest of China, but the majority of people who speak this language live in the northeast. I'll explain how that happened in a moment. But first of all, let's take a look at this newspaper, the Chap Chal newspaper. On first glance, and to inexperienced eyes like mine, it looks like Mongolian. It isn't, but there's a reason for the similarity too, and we'll come to that later. It's actually a newspaper that was founded over 70 years ago and has been continuously published since then. There are 2,400 paper copies sent out twice a week, and there's an online version. Now, as an Englishman, I see this as a priceless contribution to local culture. Languages in the UK have almost all died out. Maybe we can count Welsh as an outlier, but with that exception, there aren't many European, British, or American minority languages that have their own newspaper, are taught in local schools, and have people using them in their day-to-day life. Yet that's something we've witnessed here in Xinjiang all the time. Many people criticize China, mostly without good reason, saying things like, the country is eroding local languages. In fact, the total opposite is true. If you want to learn Mongolian, you can't learn to read or write it in Mongolia. You have to come to China and visit the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region. If you want to learn Tibetan, don't go to the Indian parts of Tibet to meet with second and third generation people outside of Tibet either. There are university courses here, and every child in Tibet must learn to speak it in school, whether they're Tibetan or not. So if you want to learn Shiba, there are advanced courses in the languages in university here in Xinjiang, in Gansu, and even in Dongbei in China's northeast. But seeing signs in Uyghur on the streets, reading menus with Uyghur language, I have to agree that doesn't prove the language is still alive and well. Wales has that. But get into a taxi in Xinjiang and listen to what the driver is listening to. Check into your local hotel, watch what the locals watch on TV, and while checking in, listen to what the receptionists say to each other. Most of the time, it isn't Mandarin, it's their local language. Walk through the streets, listen to locals speaking. You'll realize different languages are alive and well. And judging by the number of kids chatting with their parents, they're growing too. So this brings me to the question of how the Northeast and Northwest are so linguistically connected, and how is it that their written language has so much similarity to Mongolian? Well, it all relates to what my wife calls the First Long March. Back in the 1700s, when the Qing dynasty needed to both repopulate and defend the far west of China, many critics of China decried the expansions of the Qing dynasty and criticized the use of the name Xinjiang, often incorrectly translated as New Territory. In fact, the name Gutu Xinhui was given to the region, and that means Old Lands Newly Returned. Many Qing dynasty documents found in the Forbidden City verify this, but let's give it some additional context. Prior to 1759, the region was considered part of China, but where control had been relinquished. The Emperor Qianlong, and remembering that the Qing dynasty was a Manchu ethnic minority of China, not Han Chinese, tasked the Xibe of northern China with the job of repopulating, and because they were skilled fighters, defending the western borders was another part of their job. So over a period of more than one full year, 4,000 of them set out to do this, and in doing so, they traveled across the Mongolian steppes. They added soldiers, workers, even some wives along the way. And because so many children were also born along the route, despite the hardships of a 4,000 kilometer journey, more than 5,000 actually arrived in what is now the Shiba Autonomous Region. Now, a short word for the detractors who might claim that China, particularly the People's Republic of China, has expanded to take over this region. There's something you need to consider here. If you want to use the argument that China has taken over the region and renamed it Xinjiang, New Territories, please make sure you have the same argument for New South Wales, New Zealand, New Caledonia, New York, New Hampshire, New England, and every other new land, almost all of which were invaded, occupied, and colonized long after Xinjiang was recovered by the Qing dynasty. If you're going to suggest China should give it back to the original inhabitants, you'd need to explain who they were and find out what happened to them. They certainly were not Uyghurs. Xinjiang, as we know it today, was part of China during the Han Dynasty. That started over 200 years before Christ was walking around Nazareth. New Zealand and all those other places were entirely unknown to Western minds, and Uyghurs didn't migrate into Xinjiang until much later, around the 10th century. And here's another surprising fact. The Uyghurs helped the communists to defeat the Republicans. They knew where they were. They always knew they were Chinese. Most Uyghurs still do. So not only is Uyghur culture alive and well, so is Shiba, Mongolian, Tibetan, and a whole host of other ethnicities in China that most so-called experts wouldn't recognize if they were punched in the face by them. So that's my take on the local culture. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, make comments as well, please. But also the big thing is to share this widely, because there's a lot of truth in this and there's a lot of misinformation out there. I will see you next time. Bye for now.